Lordo, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Still. Great to be asked to come on and looking forward to the chat.
Fantastic. Now, I hope you remember this, but we've met before.
Yes.
You know, you remember?
Yes.
Yes. So back in, it would have been nearly 2009, you were coaching with the AIS team and we went over to South Africa together. You were one of the mentors there and obviously learnt a great deal from you. But since then, I haven't seen you for years.
Has been ages. I remember you start on one of our grand final footy show editions. You and Tommy Sheridan, I reckon, back in the day, which was we didn't know where you two were heading in that segment when you were still playing with the Giants, I think, or you were just finishing up.
I wasn't. I was at the Giants. I'd pretty much had the tap on the shoulder by then, and I was running in the grand final sprint the next day.
That's right.
But I think I remember thinking, look, this is the one chance to make a bit of a splash on the way out. To give context to that, Tommy Sheridan and myself went on the grand final footy show, on the Sunday footy show one, and I think we really just ripped into chompers and Damien Barrett and let him know where the podcast was standing at that stage, which was up the top. And Damo's, I don't know if is it still going, Damo?
Yes.
Yeah, he's still going. That's great. Yeah. Good on him. I'm joking. But no, it's good to catch up, mate. Really, really keen to obviously unpack your story today. It's an incredible one. You're doing so much. I think it's really interesting, I want to say, at the top, because I like to go and just chat where everyone wants to take it. But you've done fucking so much. So it's going to be hard to touch on everything. But I think we'll leave, we'll do the best we can. Yeah,
well, I know where I'm sitting here now. I remember I ripped my hamstring off the bone when I was 28. And all I knew was footy. And it was then that it hit me, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, which is sitting in with you, probably from a media perspective. I was sitting on my couch with my leg up and waiting for surgery on my hamstring, and Luke Darcy popped up on the Channel 10 coverage, and he was still a player, but he was commentating, and it, like an alarm bell, went off and said, that's what I want to do.
Really?
But what am I going to do about it? I've got 12 months where I'm not going to play footy. And that's when I decided I need to probably change the persona of how people view me, because I used to go on the footy show and be too scared to say anything because you didn't want to give anything away to opposition teams, and always big on not giving anything away to opposition players, teams, show that sign of strength. But I've become so bland and dull and boring. So I thought to myself, I've got 3 years of a footy career left and I've got to try and make some inroads into that. So I got media training for the whole of my 28th year.
Really?
To try and create a new path for myself. So it's sort of amazing how the hamstring, they say everything happens for a reason. I think that's what the hamstring injury was.
Yeah, well, we always like to say that. It's not what happens, it's how you react to it and what other doors it opens up. I didn't know that, though. I didn't know that was something that you always wanted to do, because that was probably one of the first questions. Obviously, like your two brothers are GMs of footy at Geelong and Carlton, and you've been a captain and Australian and Hall of Fame and everything yourself. Was it always going to be media, or was that footy going to?
I had no idea. Like so I got picked up by Essendon back in the day when I was 16. I was still at St Bernard's College, and I was playing I remember that year. So I'd play for St Bernard's on a Wednesday, and then play Essendon twos on a weekend. And then remember Sheedy came to school holidays, and Sheedy said, "You've got 2 weeks off. I'm going to bring you in to play AFL footy for a few weeks." And so my whole year 12 year, all I was worrying about was footy, and I didn't get the grades to go to uni. So my parents just said to me, you got to work until you establish yourself at AFL level. Like, you must work. So Ricky Nixon, who was my manager, just got me a job working at Foxtel in the finance department. So there I was working there. And then so my first year I got like 5 games, and my parents said, no, you got to keep working. And then year 2, 11 games. You got to keep working. So I was at Foxtel for like 2 to 3 years. Then got a bit tired of that. So they said, you haven't established. So Ricky got me a job at Triple M Rock Patrol. So I was driving around like in Rock Patrol.
You are kidding.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
in your first 3 years.
Yeah. And then I remember they said to me, can you take the car, go down the basement and wash the 4 Rock Patrol cars? I said, no, I'm not willing to do that. So that was the end of me at the Triple M Rock Patrols. And just happened that, so in my 3rd year, I was still sort of working away, and I was able to kick 63 goals. And then Nike approached me with a fantastic offer to wear their boots product. And I went to my parents and I said, you're wanting me to work, but look at the opportunities. And they saw the number that Nike put forward, and my Essendon, they said, okay, you can do what you want now. So, and then, but still, like, I always had in my mind that I'll retire at 30, 31, so what's it going to be? But I was never too sure. But then the media was the target from about 28 onwards, yeah.
I must say, look, there's so much to unpack there, but I must say, just back to the media, talking what you're doing, I do love the way you are in the media. I love your honesty, especially even in regards to with the Essendon stuff at the moment. It's so easy. I think it's really easy to play that straight bat and be that loyal supporter and be that loyal person to their friends and just back people up all the time. Yeah. But it's actually a lot harder and braver to actually be honest in the media because you know the backlash you're going to have. How have you faced with that, I suppose, of late with Essendon stuff, but just in general transitioning from a player to in the media?
Well, as a person, I'm always been someone that I can't sugarcoat. Like I've got empathy for people, and I'll do it in the right way, but just I can't not be honest. That's just how I feel I need to be. It's with my kids, it's with my wife, even on myself. I feel like I could be doing things better. And so that's just always been me. As a captain, I'd go back in time and go, I was too black and white. I was too hard, I'd say, on players who I didn't feel were pulling their weight or weren't to the levels I thought they needed to be. But I probably did it in the wrong way. Whereas now, coaching at a private school level, I'm still hard on people, but I have a lot more empathy, and I look at deeper into why they might be acting in a certain way. And then from an honesty perspective, I saw that people go, Val, you really liked it early on, the honesty of that. And Lee Matthews once said to me, if you've got an opinion to make and you truly believe it and you can back it up, mate, you just go for it because that's what people want to hear. If you can't back it up, well, you'll be sorted out pretty soon. And if you're trying to make grandstand statements for the sake of it, you'll be found out. And so, that's sort of always lived with me about, being honest. And I don't try and be outrageous. I just sort of say what I believe at the time, yeah. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Before we get into the show now, I know we'll start talking about a bit more of your career in depth at late, but I know off-season you like to let your hair down. The thing's going to go very smoothly for you soon. But you're playing a lot of cricket at the moment, aren't you?
Yes.
You're playing a lot of cricket at the moment. Now, I've had a lot of before. I don't know how this even happened because before we even said that you're coming on the show, I was getting influx of messages of your teammates sending through some clips, sending through stats of you playing cricket. I know they talk about it a lot on the Sunday Footy show, but I've had a lot of guys saying that your average at the moment against 14-year-olds is about 87 and your average against adults is at 12.
Oh, I think that's incorrect. What's amazing, I've got a mate, I play at Bentley A&A, mate's got some mates there and they've stirred me up because I've got a mate, James, who loves Dylan Friends and just loves it. Yeah. And he stirred me up that I've never been asked on. So I messaged him a month ago when you reached out to me and I said, would you believe he's approached me and I didn't chase him. And and so the moment I told him I was coming on, he's obviously just been direct messaging you. And
the essays.
Essays, is he? Yeah. And so, no, I do love my cricket. I just love to compete. And once the AFL stopped, it was like, what can I do? And I couldn't play. I love cricket as much as footy. And I couldn't play from the ages of 16 to 31 because of my footy. And so I've got back into it. So that my coaching at Haileybury and my cricket is what I love to do. But the problem is I might come up, I'm 44, I might come up against 16, 17, 18-year-olds. But geez,
you got to be honest,
I'm still fist pumping when I get them out, and I'm trying to grind them into the ground with the bat and trying to find weaknesses. So I just love to compete, and they stir me up because the wife puts the foot down sometimes. So you're not playing a 2-day. I'll cut 1-dayers. I've got a kids sport, so they stir me up that I play against the bottom four a lot, but don't play against the top four. Yeah. So they stir me up about a few of those things.
Is there a pet peeve as well? And this could may or may not have come from James, that you get frustrated. And I think every player gets frustrated. Maybe that's played at a high level with the general public that think they could have played at the top level. Yeah.
So James, for example, I'm happy to out him. He believes he has the skills.
I have so many mates like this.
He reckons he could kick a couple of goals because he's got great skills. He reckons he could kick a couple of goals at AFL level. And I'm saying you're playing twos at a local level. Yeah. Like you're not even playing in the ones. But he says, no, I've got the skills that he loves Coleman, that a Pendlebury could hit me lace out and I'd say, no, unless it's at Joe the Goose over the top, you could not kick one. It's like me saying I could bowl for Australia. Yeah. Like I couldn't, So, but he looks me in the eye and says I could play AFL, But I say, mate, you weren't willing to run up hills in pre-season. You're an outside player. I give it to him, but he still to this day believes he could still put him on that game and kick a goal or two. So
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, you can't, mate. Let's talk about the last few months. It's been a big few months for your brothers in general.
Yeah.
So Geelong win the flag. How special is for that? Seeing the success that's going through the family, mate, was pretty special.
It's great. So it would have been hard at times for the brothers to see. They both had dreams of playing AFL footy, and Simon, my oldest brother, was captain of Carlton under-19s, never made it, but went on and has been a great administrator in football he's been 22 years, I think he's been involved in the game and just been thereabouts with flags, but never quite got one. And he has head of footy, was able to be part of it this year. And I'm massive on off-field, what happens at footy clubs, and he's unbelievable at what he does. So I'm wrapped that you see our stable, Chris Scott, Simon, Hocking, in the past been Brian Cook there. And then Brad played 11 games for Hawthorn, but then, it gets cut, and then what do you do with yourself? But they've always studied. And then Brad's built from being a list manager at Fremantle to now being the head of footy at Carlton. So, and I've got a sister who's does all the finance of all the Channel 9 program budgets for all the footy programs, and Carols by Candlelight, Hot Seat, Millionaire, all those things. So all involved in football as a family, yeah.
Unbelievable. And I know condolences to you and your family. I know your father unfortunately passed away in the last few months, and there must have been super, super tough for him. But talk to the impact that he's had on you guys growing up. Yeah,
thanks. Yeah, so my dad and mum, the biggest influence on my career, and I say Sheeds and my parents are the two biggest influences on my career. And Dad, it was sad to see the Norm Smith medalist Paul Deere die recently of pancreatic cancer. And my dad was diagnosed 7 years ago, and normally takes you within 2 years. And he battled for 7 years, 5 to 6 different chemotherapies. And then the last earlier this year, they said there's no more chemos we can give you. And so I thought it'd be a month, but he fought on for 7 months. Never heard him whinge or whine once, and so it's been a tough year, but very grateful to have him as a father.
Huge, mate. I think hearing that instills to your beliefs before of your honesty and your hard work. I'm sure we'll find out a lot more about it today. Let's start your career, mate. Your father John obviously played at the Blues, played 50 games. I know a lot of Carlton supporters would be really upset that that wasn't a father-son equivalent back then, because I think there was a period where it actually was, but not at that stage?
Yeah, so Dad played 29 games.
Oh, 29 games.
And the father-son rule was 50.
It was 50 back then. There you go.
Oh, sorry. So when I was growing up, the father-son rule was 20 games. So that's where as a kid, I grew up saying, if I'm good enough, I'll play for Carlton. And that's where my two brothers, because they're older than me, got to play Carlton under-19s because the father-son rule was 20 games. But then I reckon maybe 2 or 3 years before I was ready, the rule was changed to 50 games. So that's where just had to go in the draft like anybody else. And but I grew up around the Essendon area. So if it wasn't going to be Carlton, I wanted it to be Essendon. But amazingly, the club, I was sort of touted as going as the number one 16-year-old in the country. And Sydney finished bottom and Fitzroy was second bottom. So there were two clubs, even though Barrackford Fitzroy didn't want to go to. And Carlton actually came to us and said, go to Fitzroy for a couple of years, and in a couple of, they're broke, we'll maybe a brown paper bag or something might go their way, and we'll get you to Carlton in 2 years' time. So that was the plan. And then about 4 days later, got a call again from Ricky Nixon saying Essendon are going to do a deal that they're going to send 4 players to the Fremantle Dockers, which will allow for them to get the number 1 draft pick. So,
but how does that work back then? Because you're 16. It's not actually in the draft, is it? It's like a pre-season draft.
Yes.
Like what was
it was just a one-off year where
really?
I expected just to play another year at the Western Jets in the under-18 competition. But the AFL brought in a rule that Fremantle could take contracted players from every club, but in return you could get a 16-year-old. So it was just a year that I was 16 in 1994. And and back then there was no phantom drafts. You had no idea what was going on with where you stood. So I'd made the All-Australian as a bottom ager, but you still didn't know. And then I was at the draft combine out at Waverley. It was the first ever combine. it was just a one-day thing, bit of bench press, bit of goal kicking, and next minute I could just see wherever I walked there was a photographer just snapping away. And I got home to my parents. I said, hey, there was photographers just following me around. And then my dad came in with the paper about 7 o'clock the next morning, and I was on the back page, and it was the number one 16-year-old in the country set to be taken by the Essendon Footy Club. So, it all happened pretty quickly. I was playing for Avondale Heights at 14, in the local Western Jets at 15, and then on an AFL list at 16.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's there's no real equivalent to what it is now, but thinking it's sort of like the Gold Coast when they had Hogan, Jack Martin picked up sort of those pre and were able to trade them off later. Walking into the club as a 16-year-old, what was that like? What are your first memories? Who were the players around you? Who were the names that you sort of like,
it was really intimidating because back then, like people would forget now, but back then the list sizes were 52, plus you might have had 10 supplementary list players. So there might have been 62 players. And Scott Lucas was drafted from Camperdown in Geelong, and we got to know each other well at the draft combine because we were Al and Al. We were doing a lot of the tests together, and we bonded this day. So he said to his parents, I want to go to whatever school Matthew Lloyd's at. So we went to St Bernard's College together. So Bernard's got pretty excited thinking they're going to win a premiership that year. Unfortunately, we didn't with Scotty and I in the team. But, walking in school clothes. Back then training was 3:30 till about 6:37, 3 times a week in 1995. And we'd just get a bus to Essendon Station and then training. And I could sense there was a few players that they could see when you come in touted like I was and Scotty was taken at pick 4, they weren't going to make it easy for us. And back in those days, Sheeds would go, I'm not sure who I'm going to pick. Come out with me. I'm going to roll the ball out and get it back to me, and I'll select off that sometimes. So I was 7.
So you versus another.
I'd say a Scotty Cummings. It was, there was Scotty Cummings was there, Paul Salmon. And
they just line you up and say, go get it and bring it back.
And he'd roll it out and he'd go, I'll tell you when we're going to stop. And these guys, I was 78 kilos, they would nearly been 100. And it was pretty much sink or swim. My first coach was Mark Williams as a reserves coach, Choco Williams. And I remember a pre-season, we did a brick circuit, and he just had me holding bricks above. And as he turned my back, I just dropped them, and he caught me. And he just, in my eyes, he said, you're the weak link. Don't be the weak link. If you want to cheat now, you'll cheat your whole career. And I held it in. As soon as I got in the car, because Dad had picked me up because I was 16, burst into tears. I couldn't cop Mark early because of how full on he was. And then Sheeds was just absolutely ruthless. So you had to grow up pretty quickly, to be honest, through those times of how I could see that players, some were pretty good, but others you could sense said, who's this kid coming in, take my spot. And then trying to fight your way from being the 60th player to in the best 22, I could sense was never going to be easy.
It's really interesting because I think now, as you would know, being in the media, you hear a lot about clubs and bringing young guys in and actually almost putting them at the top straight away and helping older players, helping them through. How different is it to when you were coming through? I feel like I was nearly on the last brink of that sort of transition in footy. Well, at Carlton it was anyway. Yeah. It's really different for young guys developing.
Well,
now.
I look at Horn Francis now, and he didn't deserve to play on probably where he's at with his fitness and his commitment. But you just get games, you get given games, and I think the best way about it is the way that I had to do. I might have played nowhere near as many as others, but Scotty Lucas wouldn't have played for a year and a half. Carousella's years, Blumfield years. These are all the guys I was drafted with. For me, I might have played, 25, 30 seconds games across a couple of years. But it's amazing what it does for you to fight and scrap and improve your game rather than just being thrown in like Jack Watts was. And then suddenly you sort of can be broken down quite early. So, I had a great experience. I did have a great experience, but I also was pretty perceptive of a situation to know I've got to fight and I've got to scrap. And even though I was the number 1 draft pick, I think why I was quite advanced to make it early on is I wasn't there to play twos footy. Yeah. And I was banging on Sheedy's door after a year and a half going, if you don't play, you got to start playing me, Sheeds. He'd go, mate, you're 17. And I'd say, I reckon I'm going better than these guys.
Wow.
Yeah, and actually after year 2, my parents and I met with Sheedy and Danny Corcoran and said, if you don't start playing, we'd like to look for opportunities elsewhere. And they said, mate, the reason we're doing this is because we want him to have a 15-year career. And we said, no, we feel we should be playing AFL now. And then Danny Corcoran just wrote a number and said, this is how invested we are in your boy. This is what we'll pay him next year. And it was just pretty significant in year 3 to say, we want to look after him, but we'll pay him this, but we just want to look after him because we don't want to break him down too early. So, but I was a young boy in a hurry.
I love that.
From day one, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think we, a lot of people, we get this notion sometimes everyone has, you have to be patient for things to come, and you have to be patient. You have to be patient for good things to come, but you have to be in a hurry whilst being patient. And I think that, pretty much personifies exactly that.
And I reckon I retired at earlier than people thought I should have, but it's because of my mindset from day one was, okay, how am I going to get better? And if I played well, how am I going to do it again next week? And if I didn't play well, I'd smash myself for 3 to 4 days. So that wasn't good enough. How am I going to do it? So I was never happy. I never enjoyed what I did. So I reckon by the time I hit 27, 28, I'm thinking, geez, what a grind. But okay, you've kicked 70 this year. You must kick more than 70 next year. You kicked 80. Now it must be more than 80. So I ended up frying myself mentally pretty early, but it's why you make it early, but it's also why I didn't play till I was 40 like Fletch, because Fletch was casual, whistling, relaxed, whereas I was just always on 24/7. And now I look back and go, how great was it, what I got to do? But while I was doing it, I didn't enjoy too much of it, which I wish if I had my time again, I'd enjoy it a bit more.
That's so interesting to hear. What would you have done differently, do you think?
I think enjoy the good times, take a day to go, okay, you kicked 8 today, take a day to enjoy it, not be going, all right, I missed that, I should have kicked 10, I missed that one or whatever. I just, it's interesting though, like I'd get smashed occasionally in the media and it would hurt. But now I know that it's nothing personal. It's just people having an opinion. So I'm on the other side of it. I'd try not to be as uptight. Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, if you weren't as uptight, would you have been the player you were?
That's right. Spot on, yeah.
So it's hard to know. Yeah. At 21 years of age, you kicked 13 goals against the Swans at the MCG. Not many other 21-year-olds doing that at the moment. How many would you kick in the modern day game, you reckon?
I think it'd be harder because of the way the game's played. Like I had a lot of one-on-one that day, whereas now it doesn't happen, and the coaches just don't want there to be that one focal point. So that's why I love the era that I got to play in, because I knew I was going to play on a star. Whether it was Steve Silvani, or was it going to be Mickey Martin? Was it going to be Mel Michael? Was it some great players that I got to play on? And so it was a really good era. Yeah, that was where I was starting to get bigger and stronger and have a great belief. We were building as a team through that period. And it was around that time that Tony Lockett was retiring. And then I got my first approach from another club saying, we'd love for you to be the pin-up boy in Sydney to come up and play for the Sydney Swans, and the AFL were going to get involved. And and I started to understand the business of footy, where you could set yourself up here. But it was I was too happy with what was going on at the Bombers around that time.
Did you consider it?
Not then. The only time was at the end of my career where I just hated the environment at Essendon. I wasn't feeling safe in my position. We weren't winning many games of footy, and I was still the captain, so I was putting on a brave face, but I was miserable there. And I had 3 or 4 clubs who said, rather than retire, would you come and play for us? And they were Collingwood, Sydney, the Western Bulldogs, and Carlton.
Wow.
And I didn't think too much about it, but I was doing my first grand final for SEN in 2010, because I retired at the end of 2009. And it was about 7 o'clock, and I was about to pack up and leave, and I spotted a player, and it was Nick Maxwell walking out with the Premiership Cup. And I sat back down in my seat and I watched, and they put the Premiership Cup in the centre circle, and the 22 players sat around, and they just belted out the song maybe 3 or 4 times, and it hit me then. I go, Collingwood, I could have been out there playing in another premiership because they were probably the most aggressive at the end of 99 to say, would you come and play? I had Eddie Maguire calling me. I had Chris Dawes as the number 2 forward at that time. So hit me then, but then I quickly snapped out going the pre-season, injuries, those sort of things that premiership's the end product of a lot of hard work. So that was probably the only time I thought about playing for another club.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What was your routine game day? What was something that you went into a game thinking as a 1v1, like going in? Yep. Was there something that you traditionally did? Yeah. Was it like, what was your mindset going into a game?
So I love to expose a weakness of the player I was going to play on. So what I'd do is I'd go to the video guys and say to them, by Tuesday, I want a tape, a cut up for me of the last time that Matthew Scarlett was beaten and how was he beaten. And so there was one time where Scarlett was in that good a form. We had to go back maybe 26 games, and it was David Hale kicked 7 at Geelong for North Melbourne. And I just watched the 7 and go, okay, he turned him inside out here. He pushed off him here. So I used to really go into great depth of what I could do. So my mindset was, it's funny, when I was 21, I did a Nike commercial with Wayne Carey, and Carey said to me, what do you run the 3.2? Because we used to do the time trial around Carlton, and so did they. And I said, I'm a 12.15, and he roared with laughter. And I said, what's so funny? He said, you got to be in the 10s to be a gun key forward, I reckon. So I actually, not long after that, bought an apartment near the tan, and I started running it 3 times a week. And within time, I got myself in. I ran a 10.58, and so my goal was to get an endurance base, strength and speed that no matter who I came up against, I could beat them in one of those 3 ways: endurance, speed, or power at size. And so I just look at every opponent on tape and I go, which way am I going to get them? I'm going to run them ragged. I'm going to take them deep. Am I going to get them with, position, body strength? And so that's what I used to do. I used to study the opposition hard and just try and exploit their weaknesses throughout. And then what one thing about Sheeds, the first session I ever went to, he spoke about weapons. What are your weapons going to be? And I wasn't that quick. He just booted balls at me, and I had to call out a letter on the Sharon, H, S, R. And anyway, then he had someone come up behind me, and I went for a mark on my chest, and she just punched the ball about 50 metres and said, never, ever do I want to see you mark on your chest ever again. If you're going to be a great full forward, it has to be here. So you got to train like Mickey Martin's on your back for the rest of your career. So I just hammered the craft side of it with my marking and set shot goal kicking. And I could sense that teammates weren't doing these things. So my idea was, I can see my teammates aren't going to the lengths I am. I'm sure the opposition players aren't going to the lengths I am. So if I do this long enough and well enough, I'm gonna be pretty consistent. As I said, it wore me down after a while, but it's what got me to some good levels pretty early.
It's interesting that point. We had Harry Mackay on the show last week and talking about him learning what he needs to do to become a better player, and the program that you do at a football club is just that's the minimum that you need to be done. Have you had any advice to give to young guys or working with other guys or young key forwards in the club in the AFL at the moment?
I do get asked, and I had a go at it for 1 year with Joey Danaher. And every time he was having a shot for goal, the cameras were panned onto me in the 3AW commentary box. So I didn't enjoy it. Like I'm talking like I want to just go and call a game and be quite relaxed and just get into the game. But I was sort of I was holding on to my chair in a sense because I was just praying he'd kick it. If he missed, be flat. If he kicked it, I'd be wrapped. And I wasn't getting paid a lot of money to do it. It was more as an itch I wanted to scratch with the coaching. And I thought to myself, what am I doing compromising like a media career which I'm get paid really well to do, to suddenly, say for example, it might have been I'd question a player, I'd question James Hurd's strategy, and I'd walk into the club to work with Joe, and I could sense I've begun, did that person just ignore me? Did that player ignore me? So I knew pretty early on that two roles couldn't work, and that's why coaching at Haileybury doesn't have any conflict and can allow me to coach and have a passion while not doing it at the highest level.
For anyone out there now, so speaking of those young guys that you're working with at Haileybury or any young people listening to the show now, what's a prerequisite for any player that you think getting into the modern game has to be good at now, or has to be driven at, or has to be doing outside of their game?
Yeah, we often number one, like the clubs are always they often call the school, the head of the boys at the school. They want to know about their character first. Like blokes get pushed out pretty soon if you're not a good person and of high character. That's important. I have a saying: you can't kick, you can't play. So if you can't hit targets and make good decisions with the footy, so I'd say character, competitiveness, and skill level are the three. So character, competitiveness, skill level, and then I throw decision making in as a fourth one.
Who are some of the guys that you've worked with at that junior level? So there was the King Boys, Brayshaws.
The King Boys, the Brayshaws, Aidan Bonner, who's with the Giants, Charlie Constable, Liam Stocker. In the last year, Connor McDonald, who's played every game for Hawthorn, Marcus Windhager, who were our two boys that were drafted last year. I'm probably missing a fair few, but Cody Waitman was the captain. Hugo Ralph Smith was another player. So
And what separates those guys? Is there one that you remember just looking back going, is there any of those guys that you went, shit, this guy's going to be full on?
And I've missed one. The best season I've ever seen from a Haileybury player was Luke Davies-Uniacke.
Yeah.
And I'm talking we hadn't beaten Brighton Grammar for a long time. Robert Shaw improved the standard of the comp, like I'm talking presses and full strategy that we hadn't seen before at Haileybury. And we put Luke Davies-Uniacke out the back of a press and said, if we can get it through, good luck trying to play. And Luke had 30 and kicked 6 and sat on heads and did things that I'd never seen a schoolboy footballer do. I think where it's tough, like we've got this year, for example, some really good players who are draftable, but the clubs always say just weapons. What weapons does he have? So the one boy that's going to get drafted is Ollie Houghton. His dad, Trent Houghton, played for Carlton and Collingwood. Explosive, really clean and explosive. And the AFL clubs can see that on an AFL ground. We've got another 3 or 4 who are fantastic players, but they go, okay, where does he play on an AFL ground and what puts him up? So, for example, there's 180 guys at the draft combine. There's 5,000 across the comp, and there's 60 that are going to be taken. So you have to be pretty special to get that opportunity. And then getting drafted, then you've got to be special again to go on and be in a club's best 10 players or best 22. So, it's extremely cutthroat. But forever working at what's your weapon that separates you. Is it your foot skills? Is it your decision making? Is it your power? Is it your smarts? And then just keep building with those boys to see if we can get 2 or 3 of them to a level where clubs start calling and managers start calling, that you can see a kid's going to get drafted.
Special.
Yeah.
Speaking of weapons, back to you on this, but from 2000, I think, to 2003, you won 4 Colemans, 3 out of 4 Colemans. Yep. That was some of the best footy you played. Would you agree?
Yeah. It was what I'm talking about just there with kids. I felt great. We were coming into a great era where the ball was getting pumped in a lot to me, like playing with James Hurd and Mark McCurry, Joe Mercedes, Michael Long, Lucas, and the list goes on. I've missed from high quality players, but like body felt good. When you have 5 or 6 pre-seasons, I went from 78 kilos to about 94. I worked a lot on my speed. My goal kicking routine was a mess early days. Spent hours and hours and hours, months and months to get to that point where I felt like King at the moment, I hope I don't miss. I used to think like that. I hope I don't miss this one. I'm going to kick this goal. I'd built my game to a point where I felt great, and that the gap between my best and worst was never going to be too much. Where if I had a poor day, I was going to kick my 3 or 4 goals. That was sort of the way I felt about my footy through that time as a 22, 23-year-old.
What about that period in general for Essendon? 2000, obviously winning the flag, Sheedy coach, James Hird, yourself dominating. What was that period like to be a player?
It was great. As I said earlier, I wish I was enjoying it at the time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure too, because
when you say enjoying it, do you mean actually in yourself you knew you hated it, or on reflection you look back going, fuck, that was just stressful as?
Yeah, it's just I think I was a lot of anxiety.
A lot of anxiety, like performance anxiety?
Performance anxiety, expectations. That you're expected to kick 4 minimum. I remember Lee Matthews went on an interview and said, if we keep Lloyd to 4, it's a good day for us. So stuff like that brings upon, okay, the minimum for me is I got to kick my 4, and knowing there was might be players on you, players filling that hole, just to try and stop getting through. Yeah, there was a lot of you're copping it off the ball, a lot the physical nature of it as you're coming through as a young bloke too. But what was good for me, probably getting off that topic on Essendon quickly, I played a state game when I was 23. After 23 games, and I used to have the runs. Like I used to have the runs, so I'd sit on a toilet cubicle for a fair bit of the game, and they were all filled. And I said, and then I hear vomiting going on, and it was a trainer walks past, and I said, "Oh, what's going on in there?" He said, "Oh, Brett Ratton's in that one, and he throws up before every game. Plugger's in that one, he throws up. Archer's in the next one," and all of them, the anxiety that they had, had made me go, "Okay, it's not just me. It's just normal for a lot of us in that." And then Plugger gets out of the toilet and he gets around. Oh, I'd play 23 games. Hey, get me a kick early, can you? And then he's going up, get me a kick early, can you? And you could see wide as a ghost, Plugger lock it, and it go, okay, that's just part of it. I probably should have got some help early at how to deal with some of the pressures and the anxiety, but I just fought through everything myself. But at Essendon, uncompromising. And that's why I've been pretty hard on Essendon in my media role, because it was just ruthless. Sheeds was ruthless. We had a president at the time who was just Graham McMahon, just a ruthless person. Robert Shaw, Mark Harvey, they were ruthless. Bomber Thompson, when I first walked in, he was my captain, ruthless. Training, we'd smash each other at training, compete. And then they said to me, we expect to play in the prelim. Anything less is a failure. So I went in just expecting prelims, and we got there most of the time in my early days.
Wow.
And then I felt that often teams were beaten running down the race against us because you had Hardwick and the Johnsons and Solomon, Dean Wallace, just nasty, and Fletch and Wellman were like the cream. And then a midfield that just battered deep, and then a forward line that was star-studded. So we had every base covered, and we used to put teams away like nice and early, and rub heads into the ground, noses, physically intimidate, verbally intimidate. And it was just a great team. It was just a great team to be part of when you're on top like that. We did fail. We only won one of the 3 premierships where we were finished on top 3 years in a row, and that's a big regret that we didn't go on and do what we should have. But they're hard to win, yeah.
2 people I'd love you to elaborate on and what they mean to you, and I suppose what they mean in your journey. Yeah. Sheedy and Hird.
Yeah. Yeah, so Sheeds. I remember my first ever time I met him. I was drafted, and they had there's a golf course in Moonee Ponds, and they said, come down, meet all the players, having a golf day. He sat down with me, he just asked all about me. Not one footy question was asked, and then he said, I've seen a lot of guys end up with nothing out of the game. Just whatever you do, like be smart. And he said, go after houses. Like a lot of guys get caught up in other things, go after. So he said, go try and buy and pay off a house as quickly as you can. And if you can do that, go number 2. Then you go number 3. And that stayed with me forever in terms of, I was able to, buy a place in Ascot Vale when I was 19, and then one in Moonee Ponds when I was 21. And, but it was all stem with me from his advice.
Wow.
And I was getting bullied a lot, like by opposition fullbacks, the Critty Hooks and and the Dunkleys and these guys who were at me, and he just said, "Mate, you got to start standing up for yourself, and even if you cop a few weeks along the way, I don't care, but don't let anyone walk all over you in life." And so I got suspended for 4 weeks, 4 times in about 10 weeks through 2001 period. But it was him saying, "Mate, yeah, just do it, just go for it." And he was right. People stopped because I was kicking goals, I was throwing my weight around, did it the wrong way a few times, but he just cared so much. And amazingly, like I coached a game last year and we lost by 50 points. And I called the team insipid. I said that was one of the most insipid performances I reckon this school's put out in the last 10 years. I got home and I said to my wife, Lisa, I called the group insipid. She said, "What'd you say after that?" And I said, "No, I left it there." She said, "Never forget what Kevin Sheedy used to do." And I said, What? She said, "He always left you feeling like you could be best on ground the next week. He could hit you between the eyeballs, but he always made you feel like you could be the best the next week." She said, "You better want to get in there on Tuesday and fix." And so she gave me a few lessons that I'd passed on about Kevin Sheedy, and and it was so. And I'll never do that again. In terms of I'll be hard, but go okay, but this is what we got wrong, and this is what we're going to do on Tuesday to fix it to win next week, which I did on the Tuesday, but I should have probably in the heat of the moment not been as strong there on the Saturday. And James Hird, I was always one that was told the weak will gravitate to the weak and the strong will gravitate to the strong. So if you want to be a champion player, find the best trainer and hang off him and train with him. And you'll find that we're a group who want to take shortcuts. They'll gravitate to each other and just go to the hardest and the best trainers. And I looked around and I spotted him straight away, and it was James Hird. And he hadn't been around that long. I think he maybe started 3 or 4 years earlier than me, but he'd won his first best and fairest in 94, and I arrived in 95. Then he won the best and fairest again in 95, and he won the best and fairest again in 96. But it was just like contested marking. If he got beaten, I could see his lips start quivering because he didn't like being beaten. In the gym, blokes had stopped to talk in between sets. He didn't stop. He just kept powering on. Sessions at end, he gets a bin of balls, and he just remember that when he hugged the fan after a goal against West Coast, he was forever practicing those shots, and nothing was fluke. Nothing was ever a fluke for him. With endurance, he would just absolutely smash himself. And then I was always, I'm never going to drink. I'm not going to drink. And then he sat me down and goes, "Mate, as long as you prepare, like you have 1 or 2 and you're willing to turn up and do your rehab properly the next day." And he was always very good at that sort of thing. So an absolute pro, knew when to switch off, knew when to switch on. So I learnt from him just how hard you have to work to be the best. And he was drafted in the 70s or 80s. And it wasn't the purest kick, wasn't the best kick. Had a lot of question marks on him, but his work ethic got him to be, arguably Essendon's greatest ever player and most loved player. So that's what I learnt from those two, yeah.
What about leadership, taking over leadership from him as captain? What was that like?
It was daunting because with James, it was like a security blanket. Like we got James. Like James got us out of trouble in games during the week. His ability to you hung off his every word. James Hird, like that's what he was like. Some of his pre-game addresses, like just as we're about to go to position, like he just had a way with words. And then so it got to the end of – I was in the leadership group, but I reckon it was more on professionalism more than anything. I didn't offer that much to anyone else. It was all about my game and how I could be the best. And it was the end of 04, and Harves and Hurdy said to me, "Can we catch up with you?" And we went out to a sort of a cafe in Essendon, and Harves said, "Do you want to tell him, or do you want me to tell him? Or do you want to tell him, or do you want me to?" And I said, "What is it?" And they said, 2005, I want to step down as captain, James said, and I want you to be the captain. I rocked back in my chair and I said, if I'm not playing well on game days, at halftime, I'm going into a toilet cubicle and I'm sitting there on my own going, okay, what can I do to get myself into this game? That's not what a captain is like. So I reckon it'd be wrong. Can you do one more year in 05 and I'll act like a captain for the whole of 2005. And so it's no more about me. It's time to give back to others and invest in others and not just make it about me. And so, yeah, I spent all of 05 where James would walk in at halftime. He'd just give me a wink and go, it's yours, it's yours. And the boys, no one knew I was going to be captain in 06, but he just gave me the license to act like and be the captain.
Wow.
And then, I took over in 06, unfortunately ripped the hammy off the bone in round 3, but one of my great thrills was captaining the club. Like Bomber Thompson was the first captain, Gary O'Donnell was the next, James Hurd the next, then me, and then it's been Watson and Heppel. So we haven't had too many captains before that. Tim Watson, Terry Danaher. So it's been a really privileged position over that time.
What was that like for you? I know you alluded to it before, but being quite with that performance anxiety, thinking about your own performance, then thinking holistically about the group, and then you were saying before about feedback and maybe not being able to resonate with a lot of the other players. What were the biggest challenges?
Yeah, we used to do the old leading teams and stop, start, keep, and I got up there and one of them was keep being the professional you are, but start giving more to the players. Like you've got so much knowledge to give, but can you start giving more? And I touched on being black and white. Like say if a player turned up late for training, I started having blokes 6 o'clock at the pier, St Kilda pier, in the morning, jumping off, freezing cold. Let's go, let's do it again, jumping off. And then I remember got to the 4th week and blokes still weren't doing what we'd hope. And I could see the players who were doing the right thing were like, are you serious? Like, well, how come we just keep being punished for this? I'd have massive blues with Sheeds and I'd go, Sheeds, this bloke, he's taken us nowhere. Like I'd walk into it and go, he shouldn't be playing for us. Like no wonder we're fading away late in games and because this bloke's on the drink on Saturday nights, he's hungover on Sundays, should be picking this bloke. And then Sheeds would nod and then the same bloke would be picked. So I was very frustrated because Sheeds is very forgiving, but whereas I was just, he's got to go. And I remember getting to the end of one year and I handed him a sheet of paper with 6 names and said, Sheed, we've got to cut these 6 blokes.
Wow.
That's because I was just ruthless in that sense and didn't suffer fools in that. But also I may not have done it. I probably didn't do it the right way. At times I could have thought, how can we get this bloke up? Whereas I just cut like, yes. But yeah.
Did you get better at it?
Probably not. Probably not. And that's where I retired at 31, and now all these things I'm learning how to tap into people's brains and heads better now. Like it's sort of half being a sports psych as a coach, in that it's about what frame of mind your players are in. Are they enjoying the environment? Do they enjoy playing under you? You're stimulating them at training. When do we need to mix it up and play a bit of basketball? When do we need to mix it up and have a joke and a laugh and tell a story? All the times I'm always assessing, okay, when I'm talking to the players, are they engaged with me? Have I gone a tad too long? Yeah, I'm forever thinking about the mindset and are my players enjoying what they're doing in the environment to play good footy, whereas back then I wasn't thinking of any of that. It was just, are they training hard? Are they giving 100%? How are they performing? I didn't look deeper into how players might be feeling a certain way. And I do pass that on to guys now who ask me advice. Okay, I'm potentially going to be captain. I'm captain. And I give them that bit of advice on have empathy. Don't lower your standards, but have empathy for people.
You said towards the end of your career and at the end of the captaincy and everything that you weren't as enjoying the club as much as you were when things were going well. Why was that? Was that personally or just the way the club was running at the time? Like what was the feeling for you there?
I sort of had where I wrote a book and it was pretty sure on Matthew Knight's at the time, and I'm conscious of he's moved on and I've moved on, and I don't like making too much of it because I felt like the Sheedy era was one, and a new coach comes in and they want to forge their own era, and I just noticed that I remember Mark Johnson got moved on very quickly, and then Jason Johnson got moved on, and then it was Mel Michael, and then it was Scott Lucas, and then you only start saying, okay, next it's going to be me. And didn't feel I got heard as a captain at that time, and then also I suppose we'd done things a certain way under Sheeds, and Nida was trying to do things his way, and we couldn't quite see the method behind it. He's frustrated that he felt the younger boys were really coachable, but the senior boys were set in their ways a bit. So there's probably an element of truth somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But I didn't enjoy the environment that was there at the time. And for me, retirement or another club was always going to be. There was a contract on the table for 2010, but I couldn't even stomach the thought of going another season there. So it was there. I always knew I wasn't playing 2010 there. It was just retirement or somewhere else.
Wow.
It happens. I'm sure there's players, say at Hawthorn at the moment, who all these senior blokes are getting turfed out and moved on. I remember when Isaac Smith said, I better go to Geelong because I can see Clarkson's going to make these hard calls. So coaches come in and look to remove the senior blokes for the younger guys. And that's probably a position that we were all in at Essendon at that time.
Mm. Yeah. Are you an Essendon man now?
I reckon it did. At that time, you were a bit hurt at the time, and I didn't. And I went straight into a media career, and I didn't care too much whether the Bombers won or lost. And now, as my son's 9, and he cheers for him, and he wants them to win. And so I wanted individuals to do really well, like my mates, but at the same time, that hurt of the way my time ended, lingered a little bit. But now as time's gone on, I only remember the good things. Like I sort of, life's too short to be bitter or have any regrets. So I want nothing more than to see them get back on their feet. And some say, how hard, you're too hard on your club, but I don't mind putting pressure on them to get their act together because I want to see them get back to what we used to be, and that was respected and extremely powerful.
It must be hard having those thoughts and seeing what the club's going through at the moment. It's so easy to pile on a team and everything's going, but it seems like nothing can go right for Essendon at the moment.
Yeah.
Where do you see the club at the moment? Are you happy with Scott coming as coach and what's been happening? It's been a big few months for the footy club.
Yeah, like David Barham gave me my first ever opportunity in television at Channel 10, and I just love what he stands for as a person, and he's shown that much guts and courage to just stay, we're going to change. I'm going to be president. We're going to change CEO. We're going to change coach. He's made some mistakes along the way, but he's shown a lot of courage to change and do a review with purpose to get to the bottom of why the club isn't operating well and isn't having any success. And that'll all be sort of coming out soon. And but then they're ready to act. They're already acting on that by improving the development of the club and the resources of the club. And I gave Michael Hurley my number 18 because he kicked 5 in my last ever game, the Brad Sewell game, and he just retired having never won a final, and I've been retired for over a decade. So just shows how dire situation has been. But I think they'll fight back now under this new regime and Brad Scott as coach.
What do you think they need to do? What's the biggest thing they need to
do? Develop the players better. So they get drafted because they're talented, but they don't get developed. So Essendon have hardly had any All-Australians. They haven't had a game style you can't turn up to watch Essendon and know what you're going to get. You might get it for a 2 or 3 week period, and then it's a smashing. And then what is that game style? What are they actually doing out there? Like, there's nothing that you've been able to hang on to, like Craig McRae did for his Collingwood this year, and everyone's excited. Or you might go, Carlton didn't make finals, but they're a big-bodied midfield who do this or do that. You don't know what Essendon are. So it's develop the players properly, and have a game plan that the players know and trust. And you'll be amazed how quickly, because the guys have been unsure of themselves for a number of years. at the footy club, and you can't develop in that environment.
Well, I think it's exciting to see. I think last year was saying my 3 favourite lists for young players was the Swans, Fremantle and Essendon. See what Fremantle have been able to do. Sydney have obviously been able to do, but the Dons just haven't been able to take that step yet. Going back just a little bit before the coaching decision was made, and we've known all the incredible words and the respect you have for Hurd and Sheedy. With that whole play of trying to get Sheedy back into the club, did you see that as the right move, or did you see that as a time where you need to go, no, there needs to be a new there needs to be a new future forged at this club? Yeah,
so Sheeds is one of the most loyal people I've ever met in the game, and he has a great affection for James, and he openly said, I voted for James Hurd to be the coach, and even the club said it was unanimous. Sheeds wanted it to be heard that he wasn't unanimous because he wanted James Hurd to be the coach. But it's about everyone coming together and being one. The factions and when you don't have success, everyone's it's tug of war. Some are pulling in one direction, some are pulling in the other. And I think with Brad Scott, 200 game coach at a battling club in North Melbourne, he's seen most things. He's been at the AFL where he's got a great intel in what all clubs are doing, salary cap, how they spend, what they do. So I think, he's a pretty strong candidate and was always going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time. I think there was similar probably reservations around Carlton when Voss came, thinking, is this going to happen again? But in saying that, Voss went and did an incredible apprenticeship with Port Adelaide under Ken Ingley. The only worry that I have is I'm out of the game now for 4 years, and you've been out of the game for a while. If you're out of the game for 6 months, it's a long time out of the game. But I think we're moving to more of a field where it is that more administrator of the people around you, and I think it doesn't get publicised how important assistant coaches are rather than the guy that's actually at the head. I'd be more worried if I was more excited or worried if I was an Essendon supporter of who's coming in to actually support Brad Scott in those roles, because those are the guys and girls that are actually really making an impact.
Yeah, and that's where Chris Fagan's an unbelievable man manager, but he has others who do the strategy of it. But I think Brad Scott, what I love about them is they're really confident in themselves, and there's this pretty intelligent guys. So I think he'll be fine.
Media stuff. Yeah. What are you loving at the moment? What do you love about working in the media?
What I love is I get such a mix of so many different things. So I get to do 3 TV programs a week on Channel 9. 2 of them are quite intense and Footy Classified.
Mate, that gives me anxiety watching it. I actually can't. It just freaks me out. It's so. There's just. Do you ever walk off set and people are still upset with each other, or do you do it for the show?
Well, it's a good question because when I first got called to say Grant Thomas isn't going to do it anymore, we're looking at you, I said let's chat about it, and they said we want to be on the edge, so we want to be different to every other TV show. So if Hutchie, Carroll or Gary Lyons says something you don't agree with, we want you to jump down their throat, but understand if you say something, they're going to be straight at you. So we want this to be an edgy type of show, and if you've got anything that happens within the show that you're not happy with, we have a drink after every show and you sort it out there and you walk away.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's been times where 2 people haven't come up for a drink because they've gone somewhere else to discuss it away from everyone else. But that used to happen in the early days, whereas now I think we're all so aware that the show is to try and be...
That's crazy.
Yeah, that no one even bats an eyelid if you can see that someone's just trying to razz you up or trying to challenge you. Everyone's just understands we're doing it for the program. And then the Sunday footy show has been great for me to be able to show a lighter side, have a bit of fun, show you can laugh at yourself, you can be humorous. Because when I played footy, I didn't show any of that because I felt the game was too serious for that. Whereas I used to show the boys on a footy trip or in the change rooms, but I couldn't show the public that. So that's where the Sunday show's been good. Radio with 3AW's more call a game of footy, relaxed. And I wrote as well for the Herald Sun and the Age for about 10 or 11 years. So I've been able to try my hand at a lot of different things.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Few tidbits to finish up. Favourite footy trip you've been on?
Well, we discovered Vegas. I reckon I went on a lot of footy trips, but then someone said, surely we should be doing Vegas. And once we went there, I went there 5 times by the end of my career, and I've gone a couple of times since, which Lisa hasn't been too happy about, saying you're retired now. You don't need to be going on footy trips, boys trips anymore. Anyway, in the last boys trip, I went to the Magic Millions with the boys in January, and I came back with COVID and Bell's palsy. So she said, "You're done. You're not doing any more trips." But like just being in Vegas and pool by day, in the most amazing clubs in the world by night with 30 of your, I don't say best mates because you soon when you retire, you've probably got 4 or 5 best mates, but 30 of your teammates where you can just let your hair down and relax. They were some of the great times that I'll never forget.
2-part question here. Favourite teammate and most respected teammate? Yeah. Unless they're the same person.
Yeah, so it's a tricky one. So I've got Scott Lucas is someone who just one of the great people that I've ever met in football. Underrated, for best and fairest at centre half back, best and fairest at centre half forward. But with myself and James there, I don't think he's ever spoken about in a way that he should, is how good his career was. He's just been a wonderful friend of mine. Dustin Fletcher, one of the great people you'll ever meet as well. Humble, the time and the care he has for people, asking questions. Someone said to me, it often says about footballers, what they do? I'll ask about them, but this person never ever asks, how's your kids going? How's your family going? It's always about them, whereas Scott Lucas and Dustin Fletcher are 2 blokes that just humble champions and have been lifelong friends for me.
Favourite player in today's game?
Favourite? I've loved Buddy, like calling Buddy for the last 10 years. Like he gets you excited going to the footy. He's different. He's unique. And, for him to watch that night when he kicks his 1,000th goal, just rock star of the footy. Dangerfield, those explosive types. But there's a lot of midfielders. So what Buddy's done in this era to kick 1,000 when it's tough, and I'm openly saying, he's played in a tougher era than I have in terms of zones and presses and forwards having to get high up the ground. Absolute freak.
You got to give me an answer here. Who's your bunny in today's game? Who would you love to go one-on-one in the square with? Key defenders.
That is tough. I don't know if I can do that. I'm too respectful to him. I'll tell you off there.
Favourite young key forward that you think can be the next big thing, next buddy?
I think I'll say Ben King.
Yep.
Ben of the Suns. I think that's unfortunately did his knee, but to do what he's doing often in teams that don't win too often. Yeah, I think he's a pretty special player.
Player to break out. I know you like making lists and I love reading them of players in certain categories, but who do you think there's a player that can break out in 2023?
Break out in 20... I think Isaac Rankin has... I don't know if you've say he's broken out yet, but... I don't
think to what he can do consistently.
To what he can do, I think some of the things he did do, I think he has talent that... he's very unique. Not many players have the talent that he's got. Just
on that topic while we're on, because he got traded for pick 5 recently. You're doing a lot of trade radio stuff at the moment. How have you seen the trade radio and now with the draft? The trade period in terms of picks versus players. Like in the past, I don't think that would have happened. Clubs would have held on to pick 5, but I love now that we're going, you know what, let's actually get an established player that is ready to go and happily trade it for a pick 5. Like there's been some awesome deals this year. I'm just loving the movement.
Yeah, it's good. Like it's opened up everything with future picks and current picks and things like that. And, Hawthorn are telling everyone that pretty much they don't think they're going to challenge. So we're happy just to take picks in the future. The Giants are a little bit the same, whereas other clubs like Richmond, they're in for the now. So they're giving away their picks for Hopper and Taranto and things. So, it's fantastic. It's a great time and keeps the AFL in the papers for a lot longer.
Yeah, I seriously enjoy this more than the season itself. I think it's fantastic. And I love watching, giving your brother Simon a big up here with what they're doing at Geelong. Like, to be able to get Bose and pick 7 for pick 30. I know a lot of people, hate that and they get frustrated with it. But what I love about this period at the moment is I think that we've already got such an equal playing field for all clubs, like as much as you can be. Like there's salary caps, there's all these things. But at the moment, list management and administration in football is actually really coming. You can see now which clubs have the best teams in place because they're the ones that are still continually getting players. So they're managing their money better, they're managing their list better, they're moving players on when they need to be moved on. I think it says the real business side of footy now. You can actually see which clubs are going well.
That's right. And then with Geelong, like they're winning flags and they're still getting guys like Essendon are struggling at the moment to get players to want to come. North is the same, whereas Geelong have got Tanner Bruin, Ollie Henry, and then also Bose, and then they were still chatting to Grundy and Hopper as well. So you're right, managing things extremely well, and players want to come to your club. Brisbane had no one wanted to go there 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Now players want to go there, like Dunkley and Lachie Neale and Jack Gunston, and so you can turn it around if you get things right.
Yeah, and obviously Ashcroft is committed to them as well. That's right. I think it's really it's crazy. I'm absolutely loving this time of year. Premiership 2023, who wins it?
I'll say the Swans. So I think that the young players who did not handle grand final day well at all, I think that they've probably got the best young group of players in the competition.
Have you seen the stat though on teams that get beaten by X amount in a grand final nearly don't make the 8 the next year?
Yeah, I know it's some scarring. Yeah, some scarring. I know Port Adelaide and Adelaide Crows and things like that. But I think what we just discussed is what a good club Sydney Swans are. I'll be surprised if they don't hit back again next year.
Is there a slider?
It's a slider. Yeah, I'm trying to think who scraped in. So the Doggies are always an interesting one. They made the finals. But Luke Beveridge, it's can he get the group to perform to the level? They have a lot of talent, the Dogs, but didn't perform to that level. It's funny, you lose track of who's actually made the finals after a while.
But it's very hard. Mate, what's next for you? I don't feel like you're going to be slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah.
Have you got any goals? What's your goals sort of leading into the next couple of years?
So, obviously you have a wife and 3 great, beautiful kids, so just spend as much time as I can with them. But, I'm close to signing another 3 years with Channel 9 and 3AW. And property's a passion of mine that I don't have to do a lot of work in it, but I'm always studying the markets and even with a financial growth group and always looking at major things that we can all chip money into and just watch it grow and improve it as a business, and then see in 5-10 years time, play the long game, how you could sell down the track. So I have a real interest in those things as well.
You're saying off air before, if you're happy to allude to it, you're saying like buying just parts of airports? Everyone might through the funds of everyone within the company might. Yeah, by say Novotel Twin Waters, for example, where all the players stay through the hubs. Yep. And might put in a new venue for weddings and reception centres and get the occupancy up and get the businesses up that way, and then someone might want to buy it 10 years down the track or 5 years down the track, and that's just something that I'm just fascinated by. I only own a few bricks of buildings, but there's a real fascination in how businesses can run better and. Have a little bit of a stake in it. So, that's sort of what I like to do apart from quiet time with the family outside of my footy commitments. Love it. And last question, do you ever see yourself getting back into the footy club level?
I always thought that if my media didn't go well for me that I would have, but I don't have a desire to be a senior coach at this point. Like I get as much out of coaching at a lower level than I would at AFL level. So it's probably more so now, when my time's over, would I go on, be a board member or try and help the club out in that sort of manner? But probably that ship might have sailed now with extending out probably what I'm going to do media-wise over the next 3 or 4 years.
No, it's awesome, mate. Good on you. It's incredible to catch up today. I really do appreciate it. I hope we touched on everyone's questions because there was so much there to get through. But it's incredible, mate. Really, honestly, it's massive respect to what you've been able to do. I love the way you handle yourself in the media and how honest you give it. Something that, to be honest, I'm still trying to improve. I think being able to give your opinion and stick by it is something that. And being honest and just being your authentic self is something that is really challenging when you're talking about tough topics. So love it, admire it, keep going, mate. We love having you on the show.
Thanks, well done on what you're doing, and great to chat.
Thanks, Lloyd.